Head over Keels. Actual naval stories.
Hey everybody, welcome to the second episode of our Cinemarathon. We, Yegor and Sergey, are here with you.
Senior Specialist on Military and Historical Projects.
First, a quick reminder of what our Cinemarathon is. We're gonna watch Head Over Keels episodes together, and we'll be showing a bonus code on the screen after each episode to cheer you up. However, there are some special conditions. An additional bonus code will be shown at the end of this episode if we manage to get the target number of subscribers since the previous episode. Now, let's find out whether you've managed to complete our previous task or not. Excellent! This means that a bonus code will be shown at the end of the episode. So, let's start watching.
Head over Keels. Actual naval stories. Unsinkable Sam. A sailor's routine on Bismarck, Germany's exemplary battleship, consisted of the following: wake up, have breakfast, sleep, have lunch, take a nap, then dinner, and go to sleep again. But only if you were a cat. And so this time, Oscar had a substantial breakfast and was about to go to sleep. However, his rest was rudely interrupted by a shrill alarm and people running around and shouting. The ship was rocking and shaking. Oscar's instincts were screaming, "Run away! Get out of here!" A powerful blow sent the panic-stricken cat flying, and he ended up swimming in cold water. Oscar showed up on board a British destroyer, HMS Cossack. Life on this ship wasn't as serene as on Bismarck. Cossack was always on the move, escorting convoys, hunting submarines, or dodging their attacks. The ship's energetic maneuvers, tight living quarters, and noise meant Oscar couldn't find any peace. And when the cat finally adjusted to this and found a cozy place to get some sleep, a submarine launched a torpedo that tore through the ship's bow. A few days later, abandoned by her crew, Cossack sank during a storm. Oscar was lucky again. He was sent to port on destroyer Legion. In the port, sailors presented the cat to the crew of aircraft carrier Ark Royal. "Is this the same cat from Bismarck?" exclaimed the commander. "Well, old buddy, welcome aboard. Now you're our mascot. We'll call you Unsinkable Sam." The cat found a nice spacious room to settle into, from which he could observe the airplanes taking off from the deck. This was relaxing. Wait, what's going on? Not again! Clinging to a piece of aircraft wing by his claws, the cat cursed anything and everything, especially the man who had first brought him on board. A few days later, Oscar was ashore, in the house of the governor of Gibraltar. Superstitious sailors decided not to take Unsinkable Sam to sea again. After all, he'd sent 3 ships down the drain. The cat was more than happy with this decision.
Code? You know, cats are always good.
I agree.
The more cats, the better. I hope you have a story about cats?
Almost. About African gods.
About African gods?
I heard this story from a son of the Ashanti destroyer commander. Admiral Terence Lewin. Warship Ashanti was a tribal-class destroyer in the British Royal Navy. The entire series was named. Each warship of the series was named after a different tribe living within the British Empire. The idea behind that was that, until World War II broke out, it was planned for these destroyers to visit the tribes after which they were named, as a goodwill gesture. Only Ashanti, at the very end of 1939, arrived at the Gold Coast, in Ghana, where the Ashanti tribe gifted the ship's crew with many interesting artifacts. In addition to a silver bell and a golden shield, witch doctors of the tribe placed many protective artifacts on board the ship. They actually seemed to have helped, because destroyer Ashanti was one of the 16 tribal-class destroyers of the Royal Navy, while only 4 ships of the series lived to witness victory in the war. The remaining ships were sunk, and Ashanti was among the 4 surviving ships. The destroyer fought in many battles. We must admit, she took part in the Norwegian campaign, protected polar convoys several times, and supported the landing of Allied troops in Africa and Normandy.
It's a great story. So you mean it's better to carry a protective charm with you after all?
As the story goes, yes.
Great. Let's watch the next episode.
Head over Keels. Actual naval stories. Smart Lieutenant. The fierce German battleship Tirpitz supposedly hunted for convoy PQ-17. This information remained unconfirmed, but nevertheless, British cruisers were given the order to turn around, leaving the merchant ships defenseless. July 4, 1942, convoy PQ-17 was scattered across the Barents Sea and had a slim chance of getting to Arkhangelsk safely. German U-boats scoured the sea. The sky was full of enemy aircraft. A British trawler, HMS Ayrshire, together with 3 transport ships loaded with military supplies for the Red Army, sailed north. Leo Gradwell, Royal Navy Lieutenant, assumed command of this small convoy. Gradwell was an advocate by trade, but having a coastal navigation certificate, he enlisted in the Navy with the outbreak of war. He understood clearly that any encounter with the enemy would end tragically for his mini-convoy. Gradwell had to think of something. Standing on the bridge of the ice-covered Ayrshire, the lieutenant ordered the crew of the transport carrying tanks on the deck to place their cargo in operational readiness. Bristling with guns, the merchant became a warship ready to repel the enemy. However, tank guns couldn't deal with German bomber planes, for which the 4 ships of the mini-convoy in the middle of the frozen ocean were an easy target. Then, having discovered drums of white paint in the cargo hold, Gradwell decided to repaint the ships. But there wasn't enough paint, so the decks and combat vehicles were covered with white linen taken from laundry. Luftwaffe planes flying over the ice were unable to find the camouflaged convoy. Under the cover of rising fog, Gradwell's ships were able to sneak undetected towards Novaya Zemlya. When Gradwell saw the Soviet flag in the distance, he knew that they were safe. Of the 35 transport ships of convoy PQ-17, only 11 made it to Arkhangelsk, and 3 of them have the smart decisions made by Lieutenant Leo Gradwell to thank for that.
Nimble wits and white paint helped make camo. But the following bonus code we made ourselves. Let's keep with the good mood and positive emotions and tell a bright and warm story.
There is one. So let's move from polar latitudes to the Pacific Ocean. It was the same year, 1942. Japan occupied colonial territories of the Allies in the Pacific Ocean, and the Dutch fleet had to immediately flee to Australia. But it wasn't an easy task. because Japanese aviation and their surface fleet were sending every ship they encountered to the bottom. That's why the crew of Abraham Craneson, a minesweeper, took desperate action. They turned their ship into an island.
They covered their ship with sand?
No, it was more interesting. They chopped down a lot of trees. The crew camouflaged all the superstructures, and everything that hadn't been covered with foliage was painted like rocks. During the day, the minesweeper was moored close to the shore and mimicked a piece of land. During the night, the ship made way to Australia and thus escaped the threat and survived. That tactic was fully justified because, unfortunately, 3 other ships of the same class were sunk by Japanese aviation and their submarine fleet.
That's a cool story. I'd say this story's worth an episode.
I forgot to mention that the ship has been preserved as a museum ship. We visited the Netherlands, where we shot an episode of the 1:42 scale series about destroyer Friesland of the Dutch Navy. If you're interested, you can watch it.
The link to that particular video will be in the description under this video. Let's watch the next episode.
Sure.
Head over Keels. Actual naval stories. Dark thunderstorm clouds lowered over the Black Sea. Lightning flashes lit up the deck of a Soviet destroyer, and a man with an axe barely standing on his feet. Petty officer Vladimir Sekniashvili was going to fight for his ship once more, only this time against the raging elements. For 3 months, a great threat loomed over the USSR. Germany invaded Soviet territory. In the autumn of 1941, the Soviet destroyer Bezpośredni straddled German and Romanian troops when they were crossing the estuary. Bezpośredni's artillerymen showed their best, thanks to the accurate calculations of gunner Sekniashvili. Salvos from the destroyer's guns hit the target without mercy.
The bridge is down. They're swimming in the estuary.
And the answer from the shore.
We need more fire.
At that moment, a sailor on the lookout for enemy forces produced a deafening whistle and pointed towards the horizon. German Junkers aircraft were quickly approaching. 22 German bomber planes attacked the ship. Aircraft dove on the Soviet destroyer from different directions, dropping one bomb after another. Bezpośredni desperately maneuvered, trying to evade the attacks. Columns of water from near misses constantly showered the deck. The hull was damaged, and the ship began to take in water. The destroyer started to lose speed, and one of the Junkers broke through the barrage fire and dropped 2 bombs, not leaving the ship any chance to dodge them. It was a terrible explosion. The ship survived, but the bow part of the hull was barely held in place by twisted exterior plating. The enemy aircraft flew away. After the battle, Bezpośredni was towed to Sevastopol aft first. But the weather was against the ship. As the storm grew stronger, the situation for the destroyer became critical and required immediate action. That's when Petty Officer Sekniashvili armed himself with an axe and descended into the fracture on a rope. Fierce waves and wind knocked him against the ship's side, but the gunner did not stop. Strike after strike for an entire hour. He chopped at the exterior plating until he managed to cut off the bow part of the destroyer. And it sank. For the rest of the journey, a rescue vessel covered the mutilated hull of Bezpośredni from behind, thus protecting her from the waves. In Sevastopol, the wounded destroyer was repaired and awarded the Order of the Red Banner. Vladimir Sekniashvili received the Order of the Red Star and the U.S. Distinguished Service Medal. The gunner remained loyal to his ship until the end. Together, they bravely fought the enemy for another year and died a hero's death in October 1943.
That's the spirit. You just get up and do what you need to. Do what you should with the following bonus code as well. Use it and enjoy the gifts. Sergey, do you have a vivid and memorable story?
We need to mention that sailors knew how to use an axe before the time of the Soviet Navy. During the Battle of Tsushima, cruiser Oleg desperately fought off Japanese ships, firing at her from both sides. Suddenly, gun number 11 went silent. A shell casing was stuck, and it prevented the gun from locking. It would have taken too much time to saw it. The gun needed to be operational as quickly as possible. That's why midshipman Domershikov grabbed an axe and made the casing shorter with brute force. Using the separate loading system, they managed to fire a blank shell, return the gun into service, and continue the battle. This midshipman, Domershikov, was a person with an amazing fate. He was demoted for helping revolutionaries in Vladivostok and fled to Japan, but then returned when World War I broke out. He petitioned to be enrolled into the Navy, and was then demoted to sailor and sent to the front line in the Caucasus. For the bravery he displayed on the Caucasian front line, he regained his noble rank, then served in the Navy, and lived until the beginning of the Great Patriotic War.
What an amazing fate! Thank you for the great story. Here, you can see a bonus code, as we promised. That's all. It's time to say goodbye.
Until next time.
See you all.